Hey everybody, welcome to Sweetcast. I'm going to be talking about Todd McFarlane and his wisdom bombs. Basically, he's dropping some truth. Guys, this is exactly the point that I made. I don't know, it was a couple videos ago or something. I was talking. My response to Sean Gordon Murphy, who's asking for people's advice on and opinions on crowdfunding. I know a lot of people, not a lot of people. I think a few people really disagreed with me. People that disagreed fervently, and that's cool. But I'm still going to reiterate, I think that this is correct, and it looks like Todd McFarlane agrees with me. Before we get into that, Downcast Rise and Fall is live on Indiegogo right now. I would check it out in the link in the description below. We're in the in-demand phase, and we've been making some really good progress with this book, especially as of late. It's been cool to see new pages come in, so check it out. All right, so we're getting into this Forbes article from Todd McFarlane. First off, what would it be like to be Todd McFarlane? If you had a name and you work in comics and you're so recognizable that you can get mainstream or like bigger publications outside of comics to be talking about your project, that's pretty great. So anyway, kudos to that. Of course, Todd McFarlane's got access to everything. Okay, so look at this headline. Todd McFarlane's urgent warning to the comics industry. We can't just sit here and do nothing. Exactly. We cannot just sit here and do nothing. I love comic book shops. I do. I know this is always the thing that gets brought up, but you can't put an entire industry out of business because a portion of that industry is struggling and going out of business, in portion, in small parts. You cannot do that. That's not the right thing to do. It's not the moral thing to do. Everyone cares about comic book shops. Most people care about comic book shops. That does not mean that the entire industry should burn because of solidarity. It's just a terrible idea. I do disagree so fervently with Diamond, and that they think that everyone should just full stop because they can't ship things out because of their failures. You've got to let smart people take over. You got to move forward and take over. Todd McFarlane is a smart person. I think he gets a lot of this stuff. All right. You can't just sit there and do nothing. I'm going to scroll down. This was an interview from Forbes, I guess. Let's see. Rob Salkowitz, whatever. Anyway, so here we go. This is great. So he talks about why crowdfunding. Basically, he hadn't tried it yet. He'd been thinking about it. They've been talking about it. And he said it was the right time to crowdfund. Now, I realize this might not be the right time to crowdfund if you are a small and new independent creator and maybe you don't have the funds or you're risking a lot on it. Todd McFarlane is going to draw some attention crowdfunding. So, yeah, while it might not be a great time for everybody, for some people, it's an amazing time because there's probably less competition. There are probably maybe slightly fewer backers out there because of economic circumstances, but in some cases it could work. Now, Todd McFarlane, it's working. We'll get into that. But he says that he hasn't tried it. Things haven't changed for years in the comic book industry or in the toy industry. And so he's going to be making some change. He's going to be trying some things. This is an experiment and he's collecting data. This is so great. This is good comparing what you have. All right, so here we go. This is into the meat of it. He says, this is Todd McFarlane. The fact is we have to do something. Things have changed in our industry, obviously, both on the toy side and on the comic side. No new comics are coming out. That's a really dangerous situation, not just for us, but for any consumer industry that relies on established customer habits. That's a great point. If you put everything on hold, what you're going to do is you're going to create comic book readers that are looking for entertainment, and they're going to turn to probably video games because you can do that at home. You can buy them online. That, as far as I know, hasn't been hampered. In fact, I would imagine that's all I get ads for are video games now when I'm watching YouTube videos. And so they're going to turn to other hobbies because people still want entertainment. Even now, people still want entertainment. It's just part of human nature. They're going to create new habits and they're going to lose old habits. One of those old habits is buying comics, for a lot of people. This is so bad. Yes, it's bad for comic book shops, but it's bad for the entire industry, the greater industry. I'm not just talking about DC or Marvel or any, established comic book professionals, I'm even down to indie creators. You still need to be making comics, and not everyone's going to be buying comics, but there's still a lot of people that are buying comics. There's still people with disposable income. Okay. And so to say that you're not going to sell comics to them because other people are having a tough time, it's not a good route to go. There's always going to be problems. Yes, this is a big problem, but it's only going to be worse if there are not sales happening. Okay. If there's not the industry striving to adapt, putting everything on pause, is not a good idea. You got to figure out how to make it work. All right. So he says, if you give your customers a chance to break their habit, they might not come back. I understand how we got here and why we're at a standstill, but even if the distributor diamond is down, we can't just sit here and do nothing. So I'm trying to do something. Remember, if we're not going to stores or movies right now, geeks will always be geeks. So we need to find ways to keep what we do on the minds of customers however we can. That's right. They're still interested in this stuff. This stuff is still exciting. And I'll just show you right now. Like, we go over to his Kickstarter campaign. This is an action figure, Spawn action figure. And you can see this thing. This is the one thing I like about Kickstarter that I wish that Indiegogo did. You see the numbers moving real time. If Indiegogo could just get on this aspect of it, man, I would love that. I hope you can see that. Okay. One day live, it's just climbing too. You can see it climbing, but it's $770,000. It's going to be $771,000 here any minute. This is, you would say, the worst time to be running a crowdfunding campaign. But look at this. This is massive. He's going to make well over $1 million. He might make several $1 million off of this campaign. And people are excited about it. I've talked to a lot of people, seen a lot of people on Twitter saying that they've backed it already. They're going to back it. It's amazing. So, whether comic shops exist or not, there's still people that are interested in this stuff. Those customers should be served. They should, they should have this be a habit. They should be able to get comics. They should be able to get action figures, so on and so on, even if they can't go to the store. So yeah, great. I'm just amazed at how well this campaign's doing so quickly. All right, so here we go. Here's a good question. Pivoting to current times, this is a pretty dire time for the whole comics and collectible business. I love that when outside news sources address what's happening in comics, they just go ahead and say it, that it's a dire time. Whereas any news outlet inside of comics is so bent on having you believe that it's not bad. I don't understand that. Okay, so they admit, yeah, it's a dire time. So with so many retail stores shut down and the distributor halting operations, you've been through a moment like this before in the late 90s. I don't really think it's exactly like the late 90s. It's different, but it was a tough time, I would say. It was another tough time. You look back to another big tough time that affected a lot of people. Sure, okay. Do you have any thoughts on how retail can weather this? Todd McFarlane responds, look, we've had downturns. We lost our customers in the 90s. This is different. All right, I agree. Todd agrees with me. He says, now we have 0 customers and 0 new printed comics. As an industry, we've never started at 0 before. It's completely unprecedented, and we don't know where it's going or when it will end. Oh my goodness. That's right. I think part of the reason why, people will say it's a bad look, things like that, is there's this expectation that comic book shops are just going to pick back up and it'll be business as usual next month. It's not going to be like that. We don't know how long this is going to last. I'm not just talking about the pandemic, the economic downturn and the total just crippling of industry, crippling of printers, the distributor, creators, publishers. It's been bad for so many people across the board. But to expect things to go back to business as usual is just, It's just not the case. This is unprecedented. What needs to happen is you need to assume that the industry has been changed. It won't go back to normal. How are you going to make it work today? Right now, how are you going to make sales? Okay. This is not enough people are looking at the immediate situation and trying to pivot. At least not publicly. But Todd McFarlane gets it. Right? He gets it. All right. So he says we can try to save retail all we want, but it's tough if consumers can't go to stores. That's right. It's not about like, oh, I support my local retailers, I support my local businesses. Do go ahead, keep doing that. But you still have to sell to customers even without stores. Trying to maintain the industry as it has been. I mean, this isn't even how the industry was before. There didn't used to be comic book shops. Things changed. And so you have to keep the industry alive. Comic book shops have got their work cut out for them. I think creative comic book shop owners are going to find ways, and they are finding ways to stay in business and keep selling things. But the best thing that comic book shops can have are comics that people want to buy. So if you continue to make comics and keep bringing new customers into comics, or keeping customers, keeping that habit, that's the best thing you can do for anybody working in comics, including comic book shop store owners. Let's see. Everything else needs demand. That's right. Everything else needs demand. What's the demand going to be once we're open up? Will people be more conservative about spending? Will they decide they can live without comics for 3 or 4 months? So maybe they don't need to spend their money on them. Or some people have money and they want to buy new stuff and the stores are out of business. There are a lot of unknowns. He's right. I mean, when I think of spending habits on hobbies, I mean, I'll go through phases where I spend too much money on magic cards. That can be fun. But if I break the habit, or if I intentionally stop buying magic cards to buy something else, like I want to spend a little bit more money developing my comic book collection, then I'm moving dollars around. Okay, so there's still people that are interested in these kinds of things, geek hobbies, and they're still going to be spending money. They're just not going to be spending it on comics because there's no option to. All right, you have to keep business running, even if some people can't afford it. They're going to be, priced out, or they've lost their jobs. That's terrible. That's the worst. But the problem is going to be compounded if all comic book creators are put out of business, if publishers are closing down. There's so many other problems that arise from this. We shouldn't have some kind of suicide pact with retailers, that if retailers and Diamond can't continue, that the rest of us have just all decided we're going to go down with them. That we can't do that. All right, so the next question is there anything publishers can do? Well, this is interesting. Let's see what Todd McFarlane has to say. He said, I think the industry needs a consistent message. Whatever the message is, right or wrong, we need to be consistent, even if we have to adjust it. But we really need to speak with one voice, not 4 or 5 different publishers running 4 or 5 different programs and methodologies. It just ends up confusing the retailers and the customers. That's true. That's a good point, that there have been a lot of each publisher's approaching this so differently. All right. He continues, if they put me in charge, and no one wants that, I understand. Here's what I'd do. I'd take Image, Dark Horse, Marvel, and DC, and the top 90% of the market, and make a message from the 4 of us as a unified front, one message. That's not going to happen. And then he says, at the very least, I'd say that surely amongst the leaders, we can throw in 10 new comics for free as digital downloads, top titles, the ones people really want to read. We can afford it. It doesn't necessarily help the retailers, but we can't allow customers to lose that exercise of being geeks, of getting their regular dose to keep their geekness going with comics instead of moving on some other thing like streaming video or gaming, because they will. They need to engage people in comics. And if they're not doing new comics, I don't get how we can keep them interested. Man, he nailed it on the head. Such a great point. People are going to find it elsewhere. All right. They're going to find it elsewhere. Think of hobbies that you've been into and then you've gotten out of. How did you get out of it? Was it intentional? Was it like a price point thing. You make decisions based off of this. But if you don't have access to anything new, anything to be excited about, to talk to your friends about, to talk online about, to be looking forward to, what else is there? All right. He continues. People say, do they have to be free? Couldn't they be 99 cents? And for me, the answer is yes, free. We've done okay. We can afford to give something back. You could do free digital comics, new comics, free digital new comics. Sure, maybe maybe some people could do that. But my question is, how are you going to afford to do that? Yeah, that would be my only question, I guess, is how, like, smaller publishers aren't going to be able to afford to just give out free comics. But I do think the industry needs to keep going. So that's interesting. I would like to hear more about his plan there. All right, so he continues. Then once this is over, we can do 3 to 5 events to give people a reason to get back into stores. Maybe we can coordinate the timing for once so each company gets a turn in the spotlight. Maybe do some cross-company stuff to make it sexy. Maybe the industry will be diminished. It depends on how long it goes. It's unknown. But whatever is left is the new norm. We'll need to adjust and work from there. All right. Very good points from Todd McFarlane. I would say the way that I'm thinking about things, or that now is the new norm. And if you can adjust to the way that things are now, they're only going to get better once people are allowed to move around and start going to shops. So, yeah, I see that as a good thing. All right. So next question here. His answers are just so great. Retailers have expressed concerns that if publishers release new content digitally, end up hurting them. On the other hand, you have fans sitting at home hungry for new content who'd probably pay for digital copies in the short term. That could help publishers and creators. Where do you stand on how that should play out? Todd McFarlane says, I don't agree with retailers. Doing nothing can't be the answer. If we all stand still and hold our breath, how does that improve what we're doing now? It's true. He continues, if I put out Spawn digitally for free or at a discount for a few months, does that mean customers won't buy those issues at retail? Maybe not. But I say to the stores, don't worry about getting those 307, 308, 309 that come out when you're closed and can't get printed copies anyway. Fans will come back for the number 310 when things reopen. They'll come back for Batman or whatever they're reading. Who cares about the numbers? It's a comic. You're selling them at the same price. Who cares if people get it in a different way in the meantime? I also would say I don't think there's anything wrong with shipping out comics. I mean, digital. The reason why so many people, including Todd McFarlane, are going to digital or talking about digital, entertaining that idea of digital only releases, is because it's already an acceptable release format that people aren't throwing a fit about. They've been doing it for years. Retailers are not up in arms over the fact that people can buy digital comics and not go to comic book shops. And so that's the easy route to go. The harder one is to say that we're just going to ship out these, we're going to ship out physical comics to people that want them. That's the tough sell, because that would be cutting out comic book retailers that are not open. Now, if you are a comic book retailer and you are open, technically you could still do it. Or if people could order them through your shop and do the curbside pickup, like our comic book shop here is doing, there are other ways that you could do it. But if they're not getting new comics, then it just leaves that option off the table. Let's see. He continues. Here's what I know about addicts. The longer they go sober, the easier it is to stay sober. We don't want our customers to break that habit. Consumers will be filling their time somehow. Why let a competitor fill that with streaming media or games? We need to fill it. We as the companies have the power to make that happen. Remember back in 2011, retailers didn't want digital comics to come out the same day and date as print comics, thinking it would doom the industry. They were wrong. It helped sales. We have an industry that's built around weekly gatherings, conventions, where people come to the conventions and get their books signed, not their iPads. They need something physical. That's never going away. Yeah, he's right. The physical books are always going to be there because it's such a big part of the hobby. I mean, I don't know. I personally don't like digital, but I'm fine if people read digital. That's cool. It's just not for me. but people are still going to want those physical books. And comic book shops, if a comic book shop can survive this, they can still sell books. They can still sell those physical books. But just letting people lose the habit is going to be worse overall in the long run. I think he's so right on that. Let's see, continues. We can't look at other models like music and be afraid of what happened to record stores because of digital. We have uniqueness we can cherish and rally around. That's right. It's different. It really is different in comics. Next question is, looking ahead, is there a way to shore things up for the future? Todd answers, we have one distributor for print comics. They decided for safety reasons to cease operations. I have to question the whole safety reasons thing. I think they had other problems in addition to safety reasons. He continues, because we're all tied to one person, that one decision affects the whole industry. It was probably the right decision, but it's not healthy in the long run for one person to hold the fate of the entire industry. We should be doing a reassessment when it all comes out on the other side and ask some hard questions about how to buffer ourselves from this happening again. And that, my friends, is exactly why the industry is not ever going to go back to how it has been before. This is so big, so permanent. It is unprecedented, just like Todd McFarlane said. And it's also unprecedented how fast his Kickstarter campaign is just growing. See, there it is. It's insane. People are still interested in this stuff. It's fun. It is fun backing crowdfunding campaigns, even if you're getting it a little bit later. There is something to do with the habit. You get used to going on, getting comics, being involved in it, escaping into it. Even just this, like, there's some escapism, some funness to this. Yeah, I have no idea when you're even going to get these things. When will these things be shipped? But it's still happening, and obviously it works. There are people that have money for it. This helps employ people. Fantastic. Anyway, so thanks. I still want to know what all your comments are, even if you seriously disagree with me, if you seriously disagree with Todd McFarlane or anybody else. Would love to know. Let me know in the comments below. And don't forget to check out Downcast, Rise and Fall. It's on Indiegogo right now in the in-demand store. So thanks very much, and I will see you next time.